Pay attention to the group of young women laughing together in this suburban home in Phoenix, Arizona. The timestamp reads 8:47 p.m., Friday, March 22, 2024. It's girls' night at the home of 24-year-old Emma Sullivan. 4 friends are gathered around the kitchen island, wine glasses in hand, music playing. Then there's a knock at the door. Emma opens it. A man stands on the porch, someone she clearly wasn't expecting. Her body language changes. She steps outside to talk to him. The conversation appears tense. He eventually leaves. She did not know it yet, but this is the last time she will be seen alive. March 25, 2024, Phoenix, Arizona. Emma Sullivan had been missing for 60 hours. She failed to show up for her Sunday brunch shift at the restaurant where she worked, the first shift she'd missed in over a year. Her manager tried calling repeatedly, straight to voicemail. Her roommate and best friend, Olivia Martinez, reported her missing Sunday afternoon. Emma's car was in the apartment parking lot. Her purse and keys were inside the apartment. But Emma was gone. The last time anyone saw Emma was Friday night during girls' night at her apartment. Friends remembered a man showing up uninvited around 9 o'clock. Emma stepped outside to talk to him. He left after about 10 minutes. Emma came back inside and continued the evening. Her friends left around midnight. Emma was alive when they said goodbye. But Saturday morning, Emma never responded to texts. By Sunday, Olivia knew something was terribly wrong. The case was assigned to Detective Sarah Blake. Emma's parents were driving from Tucson. Emma Sullivan was 24, a server at an upscale restaurant while finishing her nursing degree at Arizona State University. She was in her final semester, set to graduate in May. She'd already accepted a position at Phoenix Children's Hospital starting in June. Emma was close with her family, parents Linda and Mark Sullivan, younger sister Chloe, 21. She lived with her best friend Olivia Martinez. Emma was single, used dating apps casually, went on occasional dates, but nothing serious. Friends described her as responsible, driven, focused on finishing school and starting her nursing career. She had no known enemies. Friday night had been a regular girls' night, Emma, Olivia, and 3 friends gathering to relax. But then a man showed up uninvited. A man Emma had gone on one Tinder date with 2 weeks earlier, a man she'd politely rejected when he asked for a second date. Detective Blake began investigating Emma's recent dating history. Emma's phone records showed she'd matched with a man named Brandon Mitchell on Tinder in early March. They'd exchanged messages before agreeing to meet for dinner on March 8th. According to Emma's text to Olivia after the date, it hadn't gone well. Brandon had been overly aggressive, asking invasive personal questions, making Emma uncomfortable. When he'd tried to kiss her at the end, she'd politely declined. When he'd texted asking for a second date, she'd said she didn't feel a romantic connection. Brandon hadn't taken the rejection well. He'd sent multiple follow-up texts asking her to reconsider, insisting she give him another chance. Emma eventually stopped responding. Then, Friday night, Brandon had shown up at Emma's apartment uninvited. He'd somehow found her address. Emma had never given it to him. Detective Blake obtained Brandon Mitchell's information from Tinder and began background investigation. Brandon Mitchell, 29, worked in sales, lived alone in Tempe. His criminal history was concerning: 2020 harassment charge from an ex-girlfriend, 2022 violating a restraining order filed by a former coworker. Detective Blake interviewed Emma's friends who'd been at girls' night. All 4 friends remembered Brandon showing up around 9 o'clock. Emma had been surprised and uncomfortable. She'd stepped outside to talk to him privately for about 10 minutes. The conversation appeared tense. Brandon finally left. Emma came back inside and told her friends it was just a guy from Tinder who wouldn't take no for an answer, but that she'd told him firmly to leave her alone. She seemed shaken but tried to laugh it off. The friends stayed until midnight. Emma had been alive when they left, but security camera footage from Emma's apartment complex would reveal Brandon Mitchell had returned later that night, and he didn't leave alone. Detective Blake obtained security footage from Emma's apartment complex. Friday night, Brandon Mitchell's vehicle, a dark gray Toyota Camry, pulled into the visitor parking around 9 o'clock. Brandon walked to Emma's apartment, knocked, Emma answered. They talked outside for approximately 10 minutes. Brandon returned to his car and drove away. Emma's friends left around midnight, captured on camera. But at 1:30 Saturday morning, Brandon Mitchell's vehicle returned. He parked in the same spot. He walked back to Emma's building. He knocked on Emma's door. The hallway camera captured Emma opening the door in pajamas. Clearly, she'd been asleep. She appeared surprised and annoyed. They talked in the doorway for several minutes. Emma kept shaking her head, telling him to leave. Then Brandon pushed his way inside the apartment, forcing Emma backward. The door closed. 47 minutes later, Brandon exited Emma's apartment alone, carrying a large, dark-colored duffel bag he didn't have when he entered. He walked quickly to his vehicle, loaded the bag into his trunk, and drove away. Emma Sullivan was never seen leaving her apartment on any camera after that night. Detective Blake realized the horrifying truth. Brandon Mitchell had returned in the middle of the night. He'd forced his way inside. He'd left carrying a duffel bag big enough to fit a body. Emma never left. Detective Blake obtained an emergency search warrant for Emma's apartment Sunday morning. The apartment appeared mostly normal. Emma's belongings were present. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, powered off. Her purse and keys were on the entryway table. But luminol revealed the truth. Blood evidence appeared on the living room carpet, on the wall, in the hallway. The spatter pattern indicated violent struggle. Hair samples were collected matching Emma's long blonde hair. Wi-Fi logs showed Emma's phone had been active until late Friday night, then was manually powered off around 2 Saturday morning, right when Brandon was captured leaving. Detective Blake immediately obtained a warrant for Brandon Mitchell's residence, vehicle, and digital records. Brandon's phone records showed he'd sent Emma over 30 texts in the 2 weeks after their date. His Google search history included how to find someone's address from phone number, what happens if you show up at someone's house uninvited, how long before police investigate missing person. A BOLO was issued for Brandon Mitchell and his Toyota Camry. Brandon Mitchell wasn't at his Tempe apartment when officers arrived, but a search revealed disturbing evidence. His computer contained dozens of screenshots of Emma's social media profiles, saved to a folder labeled with her name. He'd been monitoring her obsessively. His phone's GPS data from Friday night into Saturday morning was damning. His phone arrived at Emma's complex around 9 Friday evening, left around 9:30, returned home briefly, then returned to Emma's complex at 1:28 Saturday morning. The phone remained there until 2:17 Saturday morning. Then it traveled to Sonoran Preserve, a remote desert area north of Phoenix. The phone remained stationary there for over 2 hours. Then it returned to Brandon's apartment. Credit card records showed Brandon had purchased items at a hardware store Thursday afternoon, the day before girls' night. The receipt totaled $214. Items included heavy-duty rope, duct tape, industrial plastic tarp, large duffel bag, shovel, bleach, rubber gloves. Brandon had been planning this for at least 24 hours before Emma disappeared. Brandon Mitchell's vehicle was found abandoned at a rest stop off Interstate 40 near Flagstaff on Sunday afternoon. Security footage showed Brandon had transferred to a different vehicle, a white pickup truck, Saturday evening. The truck belonged to Brandon's brother in Flagstaff. FBI was alerted. Interstate flight charges were added. Monday morning, Brandon's brother contacted police. Brandon had shown up Saturday evening asking to borrow his truck, claiming his car had broken down. After seeing the news about Emma's disappearance, the brother called authorities immediately. Brandon Mitchell was located and apprehended at a motel in Albuquerque, New Mexico on Monday afternoon. When arrested, visible scratches covered Brandon's face, neck, and forearms, defensive wounds. Evidence in the motel room included Emma's phone, which Brandon had taken from her apartment. Search operation began at Sonoran Preserve early Tuesday morning based on Brandon's phone GPS coordinates. The area was remote desert terrain, rocky, sparse vegetation, miles from main roads. Late Tuesday morning, search teams located disturbed earth approximately 60 yards from a dirt access road, concealed by desert brush. Excavation began. 3 feet below surface, investigators found a blue industrial plastic tarp matching Brandon's hardware store receipt. Inside the tarp was Emma Sullivan. She was wearing pajamas, gray sweatpants, and oversized t-shirt. Her hands were bound behind her back with rope. Duct tape covered her mouth. Emma had been buried in the desert just hours after Brandon Mitchell murdered her in her own apartment. Autopsy performed by Dr. James Rodriguez, Maricopa County Medical Examiner. Cause of death: asphyxiation due to manual strangulation combined with blunt force trauma. Severe blunt force trauma to head and face. Multiple fractures. Ligature marks on neck, hyoid bone fractured. Petechial hemorrhaging in eyes. Death took approximately 10 to 15 minutes. Emma was conscious for much of it. Defensive wounds covered Emma's hands and arms, broken fingernails, severe bruising, deep scratches, DNA under her fingernails. 99.6% matched to Brandon Mitchell. Time of death: approximately 1:45 to 2:15 Saturday morning, within 30 to 45 minutes of Brandon forcing his way inside. Toxicology: No drugs or alcohol. Emma had been completely sober and aware. Emma Sullivan fought desperately. She scratched Brandon's face and arms, but she'd been ambushed in her own home in the middle of the night by a man she'd rejected. Brandon Mitchell was extradited to Phoenix. He was interrogated by Detective Blake. Brandon initially waived his attorney. Blake confronted him with evidence: apartment security footage showing him forcing his way inside, GPS data placing him at the burial site, Emma's blood throughout her apartment, his DNA under her fingernails, the hardware store receipt. Brandon sat silent for 8 minutes, then spoke, voice cold. He admitted he'd gone on a Tinder date with Emma 2 weeks earlier. He thought it went great. When Emma said she wasn't interested in a second date, he was hurt. He kept texting her, trying to change her mind. She kept ignoring him. He found her address using a reverse phone lookup website. Friday night, he went to her apartment to talk to her in person. But Emma had friends over. She came outside and told him to leave, that if he contacted her again, she'd call the police. He left, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. Around 1:30 Saturday morning, he went back. He knocked on her door. Emma answered in her pajamas, clearly had been sleeping. She was angry. She told him to leave, or she'd call the police. He pushed his way inside. He said he just wanted to talk. Emma tried to push him back out. They struggled. He grabbed her, threw her down. She hit her head on the coffee table. She was dazed, bleeding. She tried to crawl toward her phone. He couldn't let her call the police. He put his hands around her throat. She fought, clawed at his face and arms, but he kept squeezing. It took maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Then she stopped moving. He panicked. He had the supplies in his car. He'd bought them the day before. He wrapped Emma in the tarp, put her in the duffel bag, carried her to his car, drove to the desert, buried her, went home, cleaned up, thought he'd gotten away with it. Detective Blake asked why he killed Emma. Brandon's answer was chilling. Because she rejected him. Because she said no. Because she was going to call the police. He couldn't let that happen. Trial began in July. Judge Michael Thompson presiding. Prosecution: first-degree premeditated murder, kidnapping, burglary. Olivia Martinez testified Emma told her the Tinder date with Brandon went badly. Emma politely declined a second date. When Brandon kept texting, Emma stopped responding. Friday night when he showed up uninvited, Emma had been frightened. Brandon murdered Emma in her own home because she said no to a second date. Detective Blake testified Brandon had a pattern of not accepting rejection from women. He'd purchased supplies to murder Emma a full day before he killed her. He showed up at her apartment uninvited twice that night. When Emma rejected him again, he forced his way inside and murdered her. This was premeditated murder. Dr. Rodriguez testified Emma died from strangulation combined with blunt trauma. It took 10 to 15 minutes. She was conscious and fighting for most of it. Linda Sullivan testified her daughter was 24, weeks from graduating nursing school, about to start her dream job at a children's hospital. Brandon murdered Emma because she politely declined a second date. When she said no, he killed her. Prosecution played apartment security footage. Jury watched Brandon force his way inside, exit carrying a duffel bag. Prosecution played confession. Jury heard Brandon admit strangling Emma for 15 minutes because she rejected him. Jury deliberated 6 hours, 12 minutes. Verdict delivered. Emma's family in courtroom. First-degree murder, guilty. Linda Sullivan collapsed sobbing. Kidnapping, guilty. Burglary, guilty. Brandon showed no emotion. Sentencing weeks later. Linda addressed court. Brandon stalked her daughter for 2 weeks after one bad date. He showed up at her home uninvited twice in one night. When Emma rejected him again, he forced his way inside and murdered her. He strangled her for 15 minutes, wrapped her body, buried her in the desert. He murdered Emma because she said no. Mark told the court Emma had worked hard to become a nurse. Brandon felt entitled to her. When she said no, he killed her. Their family was destroyed because Brandon couldn't accept rejection. Judge Thompson delivered sentence. Brandon Mitchell stalked Emma for 2 weeks. He purchased supplies to murder her a day in advance. He showed up at her home uninvited twice. He forced his way into her apartment. He murdered her. He strangled her for 15 minutes. He wrapped her body, buried her, fled the state. For first-degree murder, life without parole. For kidnapping, 30 years consecutive. For burglary, 15 years consecutive. Brandon would die in prison. He would spend the rest of his life exactly where he belonged. Brandon was let out in handcuffs. He never apologized. He never showed remorse. Outside, Emma's family held each other. Emma Sullivan was 24 years old. She was weeks from graduating nursing school. She had accepted her dream job at Phoenix Children's Hospital. She went on one Tinder date with Brandon Mitchell. She politely said she wasn't interested in a second date. He showed up at her apartment uninvited during girls' night. He returned in the middle of the night, forced his way inside, and murdered her because she said no. Brandon Mitchell will spend the rest of his life in Arizona State Prison, exactly where he belongs.